This video was brought to you by Crunchyroll, the premier anime streaming platform. You can learn more about how to get a free month of 1080p streaming with no ads at the end of this video. Who is the first Pokemon? For a few years now, I've seen variations of this image floating around the internet. It's meant to be a joke, because you can technically make an argument for each of these 4 Pokemon as the first in one regard or another. But for fun today, with Pokemon's big 20th anniversary right around the corner, I've decided to delve a little deeper and find a handful of different facts on other Pokemon that were first in a different way. But for starters, why not tackle the classic 4 that you always see distributed across the internet? Bulbasaur is probably the easiest of the bunch. Simply put, almost every time you see a complete national dex with all the Pokemon, Bulbasaur is number 1. Bulbasaur is also number 1 in the very first game as well, when there were just 151 total Pokemon to find. I've always found it interesting that despite being number 1, the Bulbasaur line seems to get the least amount of love. I just recently ran a poll on Twitter for fun, seeing which Pokemon starters you all enjoyed the most, and while it wasn't horribly skewed, Bulbasaur definitely isn't as popular with you all. I'm sure a big part of this comes from the fact that Western releases for the game got a red and blue version first, as opposed to Japan, which launched first with red and green. But even in other media, the poor guy's line just can't seem to catch a break. Ash had a Charizard, Gary had a Blastoise, and May would get a Venusaur in, like, 2008 with the Diamond and Pearl series. Among the final evolutions in the TCG, base set Charizard was the most valuable card. Base set Blastoise was the most competitively playable card, and base set Venusaur was just kind of there. But you know what? Even if the Bulbasaur line didn't get the strongest footing in the early days of Pokemon, after all these years, Bulbasaur is still number 1. Rhydon is the most confusing of the big 4 firsts, and that's because his first predates the existence of the Pokemon video games. According to an interview with Ken Sugimori, he states that the first 3 Pokemon visually designed were Rhydon, Lapras, and Clefairy. Combined with this fact, Rhydon is also index number 1 in the original series' code, suggesting that it was likely one of the first, if not the first, Pokemon programmed into the game. Back when Pokemon was still in its Capsule Monsters early design phase, you can see a lot of art that features Rhydon. On top of this, the art for Substitute in the first and second generations looks a lot like a Rhydon. If you're gonna make a dummy placeholder image for a fake Pokemon, why not make them look like the first Pokemon ever designed? Also, you can even find Rhydon statues in the entrance to many gyms throughout many different Pokemon games. So yeah, in terms of pure character conception, Rhydon just might have been first, and you can find it just about everywhere. I'm still not sure why that allows it to surf, but that's a question for another day. And then we get to our final 2. Which Pokemon came first within the Pokemon universe? Mew or Arceus? Oh no, Jaywood said the A word, but he didn't say the A word the way I wanted him to say the A word. If only there was some way I could learn why it doesn't matter how you say the A word after all. Well, let's take a look at the differences and similarities between the 2. Mew was, for a very long time, assumed to be the common ancestor for all Pokemon. Aside from Smeargle sketch shenanigans, Mew is the only Pokemon that can learn every TM and HM move in the Pokemon universe. And check out some of these Pokédex entries. Because it can use all kinds of moves, many scientists believe Mew to be the ancestor of Pokemon. Its DNA is said to contain the genetic codes of all Pokemon, so it can use all kinds of techniques. It's so intriguing that lore is often uncertain in the Pokemon universe. Look at that language. Many scientists believe. It is said. Even Pokemon isn't sure if Mew is the first Pokemon or not. So 4 generations into the Pokemon lore, we received word of Arceus, a new hidden Pokemon with a higher stat total than we had seen at the time, the ability to use a plate to become every single type, and a whole lot of interesting Pokédex entries. Just check it out. Created the universe. Born before the universe existed. But would you look at that? We're getting that exact same kind of language that you see with the Mew entries. It is described. It is told in mythology, according to the legends of Sinnoh. Never outright confirming or denying, just observing the lore of others who describe the Pokemon. So who came first? Ultimately, both Pokemon's origin stories come off more as legends within the universe of Pokemon rather than actual fact. Arceus does have much higher stats than Mew, but it can't learn several moves that Mew can, including punching moves, despite its so-called 1,000 arms. Some like to imagine the Mew-Arceus relationship as one similar to God and Adam in Judaism, where one is the creator while the other is a common ancestor. But this is also strange because Arceus is often credited as the direct creator to several other legendary Pokemon, such as the Lake Trio and the Creation Trio. which would make it hard to accept that Mew is also a common ancestor of them. Some people just don't like Arceus because it showed up 10 years after Pokemon fandom had existed, and then suddenly commanded the attention as Pokemon's new god. But ultimately, despite there being no concrete evidence of one's existence as first over the other, both Pokemon are certainly unique and in many ways the first of their kind. Plus, I can own them both in a tiny metal sphere. So where's your god now? So that's the big four, but for fun I decided to poke around a few other areas within Pokemon's long history and dig up a few other firsts. Within the video games, the first Pokemon that you'd ever witness are Nidorino and Gengar, facing off in their classic opening duel. Although the designs have changed greatly since then, some of the very oldest existing Capsule Monsters artwork highlights the battle between these two. This art goes all the way back to 1990, a full 6 years before Pokemon even existed. Moving to the Pokemon card game, I actually struggled digging up concrete information on a Pokemon card that was designed first. Going to the first official set, technically the first numbered card in the English set is Alakazam, since they went by alphabetical order and in decreasing rarity. The Japanese sets actually didn't use set numbers at all for a while. They just used Pokedex numbers and no number at all for trainer and energy cards. Until the VS set. Another weird situation because this full set was never officially released in English. In this set, Japan's first card to be officially numbered is Falkner's Pidgeot. In the anime, Mewtwo is technically the first Pokemon we see in the theme song. In the English version, anyways. In Japan, the first Pokemon shown in their theme song is Charizard. Not a bad choice on either side, really. If we're counting the opening of the show, that just emulates the same thing that we've seen in the games, with Gengar facing off against a Nidorino. If we're getting really technical and don't want to include the opening TV segment, you could even say that the first Pokemon revealed within Ash Ketchum's world is Voltorb. Boom! Right there. And speaking of firsts and the anime, there's actually some evidence, such as the Pikachu's Global Adventure book, that suggests it was actually Clefairy that was originally proposed as Ash's first Pokemon. I'm sure a small handful of Pokemon fans are aware of that crazy Pokemon Pocket Monsters manga, which features Clefairy as the main character, but I feel like a lot less people realize that this manga is actually a full year older than the anime. In this book, Clefairy is like the modern-day Deadpool of Pokemon, constantly breaking the rules and breaking the fourth wall, and it very rarely does anything a normal Clefairy would. Moving from the manga to the TV show, Pikachu was chosen as the sole mascot. Producers felt Pikachu appeared more like a pet that you could intimately care for in real life, and they also felt like its design was more universally recognizable. Seeing how Pikachu is one of the most massively recognized icons in all of media, I think they knew what they were doing with that switch. Who knows what the world would be like if Clefairy remained the series mascot? The Clefairy from the manga actually did get a short cameo in the anime's 360th episode, but the truth is out there. Clefairy was first. Alright, let's go off the rails. We've done the first Pokemon cards, the first Pokemon in the anime, but what about the first Pokemon cards in the Pokemon anime? It all started with a card. But this isn't the card that we're looking for. The first time a Pokemon TCG card showed up in the anime was Dark Primeape, shown in the 73rd episode of the anime, first aired in December of 1998. The US would get this episode in October of 1999, but since they wouldn't see the Team Rocket set until the year 2000, they just covered it up with badly photoshopped pictures of James. So yeah, whenever someone asks you who the first Pokemon is, you can tell them it's definitely Dark Primeape. In the cards. In the cards in the show, only in Japan. Special thanks to Crunchyroll, who are helping support this channel again by sponsoring today's Nintendo Fact video. They've been a huge help to the show in 2016, and considering that I've already been using them for anime streaming for a while, they've been just awesome to work with. Crunchyroll's the best service for dramas, manga, and of course, streaming brand new anime straight from Japan, ad-free in 1080p. The huge show I recommend right now is Erased. It's a gorgeous time travel themed thriller that somehow combines dark moments of crime and tragedy with some of the sweetest moments I can think of from a recent show. The roller coaster ride is about halfway through right now and still full of cliffhangers, so if you want to catch up and watch new episodes subtitled right as they come out from Japan each week, you can check it out in HD with our link right here. At crunchyroll.com/jwits, you can get a month of premium Crunchyroll completely free. You can also find that link in the description, so you can click there to check out your free month if you're interested. They stream from just about every major device, and even the Wii U. And even if Erased isn't for you, they have a huge library that I'm sure you'll enjoy. That's it for today, but thanks for checking out my strange little video of Pokemon Firsts. If you want to be first to find out when my new videos come out, you can click the subscribe button below to get updates when my new videos release. I'll see you guys next time with more Pokemon content.